Welcome to David and David on Real Estate. Join us as we explore the ins and outs of the real estate market.
Good morning, David, and welcome to podcast number, oh my
18.
God.
Lucky number 18, I think.
Lucky number 18. Oh my goodness. Can't believe it's been 18 podcasts already. It's actually been more because we did 2 special editions as well. So, we're getting up there.
Yeah. No, we've covered some interesting things so far, and we got some really good things to talk about today.
We really do. It's been really interesting out there. Let's do a quick market update. Market is still extremely busy. We're still seeing lots of transactions come through my office. We're still not seeing a lot of properties come onto the market. There's still a shortage of listings. However, we are seeing the number of new listings increase, which is a great sign. But we're still seeing a lot of multiple offers, and we're still seeing the days on the market drop. Right now, we're looking at minus 14%, which means that properties are selling 14% faster than they did same time last year. We're seeing the number of showings up drastically, the number of offers up drastically. And we're also seeing the number of transactions increase year over year as well, which is a great sign.
Yeah, those are all great signs to a continuing strong market. And we always have to remind ourselves, you get sort of used to a peak at some point, and then we think those are the norms, but they're not the norms. They're not sustainable. It had to come down a little bit, and I think that's what we're experiencing now, but it's still a very good market, lots of activity, lots of action. Everybody's busy in our office. We're going like crazy. We got month-end closings this week, so everybody's busy with that, and we'll be busy in November until the end of the year, I'm sure. And before you know it, we'll be in the spring market, which will give everybody a boost too.
Absolutely. And the other statistic that everybody seems to be paying attention to, and is probably the most important, is the average price. And again, year over year, we're seeing it up 15%. And right now, the average price, according to my analytics, is $1,173,000 in Mississauga, which is an astronomical figure, and it's probably the highest I've seen it as well for Mississauga. And these are all property types as well.
And I'm sure with all your experience and expertise, if someone would have asked you 3 years ago if that's where the prices would be today, like not you or anybody else could have possibly predicted this, right? That the prices, that would be the average price in Mississauga right now. No chance.
I mean, it's, nobody has a crystal ball, and nobody really can tell where the market's going. But one key indicator that we all seem to be talking about right now is inflation. And inflation is partially responsible for these prices being going in an upward trend like they are, right? And inflation really encompasses everything, encompasses materials, encompasses labor, development levies and charges, and all these expenses contribute to the average price, trending upwards over time.
Yeah. And there's still, right now, everybody's experiencing a lot of shortages of materials. Forget about shortages of supply of houses on the market, but there's a lot of shortages of material in general right now. Some of this is just COVID fallout and things like that. There's just a supply shortage going on everywhere, and that's pushing prices up and I think driving inflation to some degree too. So that'll have to settle down. It probably will at some point as production continues and people are back at work and crank up productivity and get more supply of materials out. So, a lot of this is cyclical and it'll calm down, but right now we're feeling it, and that's helping to push up pricing for a lot of items, including housing.
Yeah, and it's really handcuffing certain homeowners that are doing renovation projects and are doing projects around the house. There is only a certain choice they have as to what type of finishes, what kind of faucets they're putting in, what type of wood they're putting in. And it's having an effect on driving the prices of what is available out there, and it's impacting inflation in a big way. And today was another key date that I was really keeping an eye on, because today was the date that the Bank of Canada announced their monetary and their their interest rate policy um, for the economy. And they made the decision to keep the interest rate unchanged at 0.25%, the bank rate, which is the rate that the Bank of Canada lends money to the major financial institutions. And this is also the rate that a lot of variable mortgages are pegged to. So I don't know, what are you surprised that the Bank of Canada kept the rate the same?
Well, I'm sort of happy to hear that. I was sort of expecting they might move it up marginally. But I know that there's a real reluctance to move it at all, because it doesn't take much to stop an economy or slow down an economy. And if it shows, if you see that there's a trend of it creeping up, even if it's done slowly, that starts to have an effect. And usually there's an immediate rush for people to get some transactions closed before the rates go even higher. So it creates a lot of activity, but that's usually followed by a lull because it starts to get more expensive. But I think the government's being very careful. They don't want to do anything that's going to slow the economy down right now. They want to keep things affordable and keep the economy moving. So maybe that's part of the thought process. But I'm, as a business owner, I'm happy to hear that they're leaving it where it is. I don't think we want anything to slow the economy down now. We want everybody's getting back to work. Productivity's ramping up. We want there to be a real active market. We want people to have incentives still in place to go and buy the next house that they want to move in. So I think for our industry, that's great news.
No, I agree completely. And I think the message that the Bank of Canada really put out to the marketplace is that they believe that a lot of the effects that we're feeling right now are temporary in nature, right? So we mentioned the supply issues. I mean, those are temporary issues that we're facing right now. Chip shortages in China and production shortages and raw material shortages. Ports are closed, right? So there is a delay, and that's causing undue pressure on certain materials. But in their statement, I think they said that they believe that this is a temporary situation that we're in. And I think that's why they're approaching it a little bit more in a cautionary fashion, which I think is great for our industry, right? I mean, I think because variable mortgages are tied to the Bank of Canada rate, I think this is going to be a positive for many Canadians to have open mortgages and variable mortgages out there and keep affordability down.
Yeah, and a lot of people have variable mortgages right now, or variable interest rates tied to a line of credit. Some of them have a mortgage, and they might also have a line of credit, and the mortgage might be a fixed rate, but they may also have a line of credit that they're using for the renovation or to get money for a deposit on the next property, etc. So it's good news for all of them if the rates stay down, because once the rates start creeping up, there's going to be an effect of slowing the housing market down for sure, and it'll have an effect on our. So that's good news. I'm glad. Nice you come up with some good news today.
Thanks, Dave. Absolutely. The other good news I got was one of my mentors gave me a call yesterday, and he's looking for a beautiful penthouse apartment in Toronto, which is very timely for the conversation that we're having, because we're talking about pre-construction industry. And I went online and I looked at what's out there, and I was actually able to find an apartment at 16 Harbor Street. This is a Pinnacle development, and it's actually really interesting because the building was actually built 11 years ago. The penthouses were furnished and finished 6 years ago, and they've still never been occupied. So I managed to find him a 2-story penthouse. It's about 4,700 square feet, 6 parking spaces. And this particular apartment has its own private swimming pool and hot tub and a rooftop terrace on the 55th floor with 360-degree views of Toronto. It's absolutely spectacular.
Yeah, that's got to be something to see. It's really a fairly remarkable story that the building has been in use and occupied for that long already, but yet this unit has remained vacant. That would be the first occupier of that unit. But I guess, you know, it's a pretty exclusive unit. There's a very limited market for people that would be looking at that type of unit. There probably isn't another one in the city that would be comparable with that, with its own swimming pool up at the top like that.
It's certainly a very unique unit, and I think you know, it's an interesting story, even from a business point of view, or from the pre-construction, from the builder point of view. The fact that the builder made a choice to hang on to that unit for as long as they did, to me, that shows a lot of strength and belief in our real estate market. I spoke to the listing agent, and he told me that regular inquiries for leasing, and they also get regular inquiries for movies to be shot in the apartment. And the builder said, absolutely no way. I want this unit to be completely untouched. I want it to be never occupied. And we're looking for that one buyer that's really going to want to have a statement property in Toronto, with, you know, never repeated amenities. Like the whole 55th floor has a giant, I mean, like a giant swimming pool, not a little swimming pool, but this is like a lap pool. They have their own HVAC system that controls the temperature and the humidity level in the pool. They have their own cleaning service that comes 4 times a week to maintain that pool and make sure the water is just right and perfect. And it's all part of your maintenance fees and your costs. So, you know, I have an appointment to show it next Wednesday at 2 p.m. And, you know, I don't sell a lot of real estate anymore. This is, you know, my mentor. It's somebody that I've looked up to for a really long time. And, you know, I'm really excited. I'm really excited about showing this unit and taking him to see this penthouse next Wednesday.
That'll be pretty exciting. I'd like to see the pictures and the videos you have of this unit. You know, and I'm sure they probably put some extra measures in to make sure that when he's swimming in the pool, the water doesn't drip down onto people on the lower floors. And from this pool, you got to have lots of sealant in there to make sure that, to look after that too. So it'll be quite an interesting property to see. I'm sure it's got some spectacular views as well, you know, given its location and its, you know, views of the lake, views of the rest of the city, you know, views looking north from that would probably be more spectacular than the view south of the lake, right? Because we'll see the whole city from up there, I'm sure.
Yeah, and it's the only apartment on the whole floor, so it's quite special. Like you don't see properties like this coming on the market very often, and you know, there is a big chunk and a substantial cost to upkeep and the maintenance costs of an apartment like this. So you know, we see a lot of builders chopping these apartments up and you know, making them to smaller suites are a little bit more accessible to everybody and easier to sell and more of a market segment for those type of apartments. We certainly don't see you know, anything like this being sold as one unit very often. And I mean, it took 11 years to, you know, really get it to a point where the market has caught up to the value. And the listing agent said to me, David, like, we've had, I think, 6 showings in the last 2 weeks, which is more than we've had in the last 7 years combined, right? So that just shows me where the market's heading. It shows me what type of people are looking into these mega real estate properties in Toronto. And my argument is that, you know, Toronto become such a long way that, you know, we are in the same conversation as New York City, as Los Angeles, as, you know, some of the other mega cities that other people want to live in. And we keep hearing it over and over and over. We keep hearing it from, you know, Drake, and we keep hearing it from some of the Raptors and some of the other NBA stars and that have left us. I mean, Kawhi Leonard, to this day, whenever a reporter asks him about his time in Toronto, I mean, he just can't speak with enough accolades about, you know, our city and the culture and what it was like winning a championship here. And I just think that Toronto's been put on the map in such a global scale. And I'm excited to see what the future has in store for our real estate.
Yeah, and you got to remember too, Toronto's always had a history of a fairly wealthy segment as well. So all the a lot of the homeowners that had these mega properties in the middle of Toronto, like on the Bridle Path and those areas, and there's areas like that out in Oakville and in the surrounding areas too. At some point, they become empty nesters too, and some of them are finished with living in those mega houses, and now they're looking in the next market and they want to be downtown in some of these large, unique type of condos. So there's some of that that's going on too. I did one. It's got to be 20 years ago. It was I won't mention a name, but it was also a 2-story condo downtown. Didn't have a pool, but it had just about every other bell and whistle possible. He was a former Olympic champion, major star, major Canadian hero, and he bought a condo, a 2-story condo. It was one of the first ones that I remember downtown. It was about 20 years ago, with all the bells and whistles. It was on two full floors. Right. And what a place for entertaining and everything, and big patios and outdoor space, not patios, we call them terraces and things like that. So different market. Okay, then we're talking about our pre-construction talk. We're talking about some of these small little 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, or studio den type of condos, and there's so much of that in the city. We're going to talk about with pre-construction and everything, but it's nice to know there's the high end of the market as well.
Yeah, and talking about high end, I was talking to one of my pre-construction specialists here at the brokerage that does over 200 pre-construction properties a year. And he told me that there's 2 projects coming out in Toronto. One is selling for $2,300 a square foot. One is selling for $3,200 a square foot. Now, I mean, those are unprecedented numbers, like completely unprecedented. But I mean, the trend is that, these pre-construction prices per square foot are really trending upwards in a big way.
Yeah, like that's sort of mind-boggling that, per square foot, and these aren't small square footages. So you put the numbers together and it's a lot of dough.
Yeah. So
and they're generally paying cash on these transactions too, right? So
yeah. Oh, you better believe it. I mean, my mentor it's going to be a cash transaction, right? When he buys this place, and all the credit to him. I mean, he was looking at a mega mansion on the water in Oakville, and after showing him several properties, he just decided that he has a beautiful cottage in Muskoka that he spends a lot of his time, and he just didn't want to maintain and upkeep a second property in Oakville. Right. And he's traveling the world 3 months of the year as well. He's not here. He's enjoying retirement and enjoying his life, and having a condominium on the 55th floor in Toronto with his own private pool and patio and 6 parking spaces and beautiful city views is a lifestyle choice.
Right. It's just a lifestyle choice on a different level. And I've got a client recently doing the same type of thing. He has a big, huge property in the city, but he's got a cottage that was rebuilt in the Muskokas also area, and it's like a $14 million cottage or something. Like it's an estate property up there, and he's spending more and more time up there. He's got access to a golf course right beside it. He has a golf cart, can go from his cottage to a golf course, like a club link golf course in his backyard, basically. And that's the lifestyle. So he wants to spend most of his time there. So the plan is to sell the house in the city and do a condo. And he'll also be looking for that type of a luxury condo in the city. So I think we're gonna see a fair bit of that.
Yeah, and like you said, people that live in the Bridle Path or in Forest Hill or in these exclusive areas in the city, I think there's going to be a trend that they're going to be selling those houses. And let's be honest, those houses are worth a pretty penny as well. I mean, they're worth a lot of money.
Right.
So I mean, you could buy 3 condos if you sell some of those properties, and I think we're going to see that trend intensify in the time coming.
Yeah.
So let's jump into our previous discussion. I know we were talking about pre-construction condos and I wanted to share my story. I thought it was very timely that I'm showing this mega penthouse. And really what comes to mind here, David, is let's start and talk about occupancy date. What is an occupancy date when we're talking about pre-construction condominiums?
Yeah, well, for a condo, the way the system works, there are generally two closings. One is the occupancy closing, which is a time when you actually get the keys and can move in and live there. And then there's a second closing, which we usually call the final closing. And that's the time when the title actually gets transferred to the homeowner and they get their mortgage at that time. And the reason that it's done in the two stages usually is because the physical condo is often ready for people to live in, and like it's habitable, it meets all the standards to move in before the condominium is actually registered. It's an extremely complex process to register a condominium. There's just so many municipal governmental checks that they have to go through to get it registered. So that usually lags behind. The registration of a condo lags behind the time when it's physically ready for people to start moving into. So the system was created that when it's physically ready to move in, people can move in, get their keys, but they can't register a mortgage. They don't even pay the final amount that they owe the builder on closing. So they're allowed to move in and they pay an occupancy fee for a period of time until the condominium is registered. And once it gets registered, then they can put their mortgage on, they'll get title, they put their mortgage on, they can get the balance of the money over to the builder, and that's the final closing. So in the meantime, they pay this occupancy fee, which is based on the estimated common expenses or monthly common expenses or maintenance fees that they'd be paying anyways, their estimated property taxes. And the third component is interest that on the balance that they still owe the builder, because they're not paying the builder all the money that they would pay him on closing. So until they can pay him, the builder charges them interest on that amount that's still owed. And the rate isn't something that's negotiable between the builder and the home buyer. It's a rate established by the government through the Condominium Act, and they post a rate, and that's what the rate is. It's just a conventional interest rate. So they're not getting hammered with an interest rate at that point in time. They're paying a conventional interest rate. And then sometimes it's 3-6 months, sometimes it's a year after they've actually moved in, then we finally have the final closing. And that's when they get title to the property, they get their mortgage, they pay the balance to the builder, and the property is theirs.
It's actually quite an ingenious way of solving a couple of problems, right? I mean, the first problem you're solving is that you're giving the new buyer a place to live, right? Before all the technicalities and everything's completed, right?
Yeah.
The second problem that you're solving is you're helping the builder carry the construction and put money into their pocket so they can fund the rest of the finishes and fund the project and start paying back some debt servicing before they actually receive any further money for the closing for the units as well. So I mean, those two things are really important. They play a fundamental role in how that occupancy date is really structured.
Right.
Where an agent can add a lot of value here is I always encourage my agents to buy on the top floor, and that's why some of the top floors are more expensive, is because a builder always works from the ground up to finish a condominium building. So the higher you go, the least of an occupancy date that you have to pay for before your final closing. So if you buy on the penthouse level or the sub penthouse level, chances are you don't even get an occupancy date where you're paying the builder a rate. You go straight into your final closing. At that time, the building's almost complete anyways. So there's a little bit of a tidbit of information. When you are buying in a pre-construction builder, try to buy on the higher floor, because that's going to limit the duration that you pay that occupancy fee.
Yeah, that's great advice. And like you pointed out too, you're generally paying more for the higher floors as well as you move up. It could be the same physical unit, but as you go up, the views are a little bit better and things like that. So you're generally paying a little more for that too. But that's good advice. And the other thing is, generally when they start the occupancy, it means that the dwelling units themselves are fit for habitation. A lot of times all the amenities in the building are not completed. There may not be a swimming pool in the building ready to use. There may not be a fitness center. There may not be, some of the lobby may not be fully done and things like that. But, there will be places to park the cars, and the elevators will be working, and you can physically get up and down and in and out. But there's certain inconveniences that go along with that, because not all the amenities are usually complete, and you have to close and you have to move in and start paying your occupancy fee. But that's not very different from, when you move into a subdivision. When you first move in, there's some things that aren't done. The driveway hasn't been paved, and the grass is usually not put on the lawn yet, and you're living in mud and things like that. There's some inconveniences that go along with that too. So it's not that different. And that's sort of a small price to pay for people that want to get into a brand new property.
Yeah, you take a Kleenex and you run it through your floors, and you look and it's all brown because you're living in a construction site, and
Exactly.
dust is flying through the air, but you know what, it's one of those things that you just have to put up with. But one thing I did want to point out, David, and you bring up an excellent point, is where themselves in trouble is when there's an occupancy closing and the unit goes for rent. And sometimes what I've seen happen, when the tenant comes in, they have the expectation that they're going to have these world-class amenities at their disposal. And for the first year, for the first 6 months, for the first month, amenities are closed. And we see a lot of pushback in this regard. So if you are looking to list a pre-construction condo where you have occupancy closing and you want to rent it out, really set expectations, and I would say set expectations on paper, because you don't want the tenant to expect these amenities to be open only to find out that they're not, that they have to wait, and it causes a lot of negative feelings between the landlord and the tenant. And we've seen some agents really get into trouble with this.
Yeah, that's a great point, David. And I'll even take that back a step too, because first thing we got to find out is, can a tenant occupy it as of the occupancy date? Most of the times, builders' forms of agreement of purchase and sale prohibit that. They say that you cannot lease it out until after the final closing. And sometimes it goes on to say, unless you get the prior written consent of the builder. And sometimes there's a bunch of terms and conditions attached to that. So that's one of the things that we look at when we review the agreements of purchase and sale. Something the agents have to look at, something lawyers certainly look at when it comes to our level, because that's one of the things that's really critical to some people. And sometimes it's a negotiating point where a builder might say, yeah, we will allow you to rent it out as of occupancy, as long as certain terms and conditions are met, and that has to be spelled out in the agreement or an amendment to the agreement. And sometimes there's a clear prohibition, no, you just can't. And you can lease it out after the final closings. After final closing, it's your property. You can do what you want with it. But during the occupancy, a lot of times there's a restriction on that. And the same thing on assigning units, which we could talk about too. There's usually a clear prohibition against it in most standard builder agreements of purchase and sale. So it's one of the things the agents have to look at when they're helping a buyer, and one of the things that the lawyers have to look at to find out, can you do this? And if you can, what terms and conditions are attached to it? Because sometimes it makes it prohibitive. Sometimes it's just something that can be negotiated.
Yeah. I want to peel that back even more, David, because I think it's such a interesting point that we're talking about right now. And I have agents coming to me with these questions, asking me why. Why are they not allowing this? Why are they not allowing assignment? Why are they not allowing tenants to occupy during the occupancy period, right? And there's a reason for it, right? And the reason for it is that just like in the example I gave of my mentor looking at this mega apartment, a lot of the times the builder will hold back suites for themselves, or be in a position where they're not sold on all their inventory. They still have, these penthouses available. They still have these odd suites that, are not that sellable for whatever reason. And they don't want to compete with everybody else as purchased a unit in the building in selling those suites. right? So a lot of the times they put these measures in place to safeguard themselves and to protect their own inventory from competition. I mean, you can imagine if a builder has 10 suites left and they're doing their hardest to sell them, and all of a sudden, before they register the building, another 30 suites come on the market, right? And all of a sudden, the builder is now in competition with other people for the sale of those suites. So it is a way for the builder to protect their inventory. The other thing I see happening a lot is when a building is under construction, there's a lot of areas that are really exposed in the building. There's construction going on, certain suites are left open, amenities are half finished, and there's a lot of probability for accidents happening, right? And the builder wants to control who's in the environment, who's coming, who's going, who's coming in there. Is a tenant that has no vested interest in the ownership of the building is more likely to cause problems, or to damage property, or to do certain things, whereas an owner would have a more vested interest to protect certain property and to conduct themselves in a certain way, because they know that they're part of the building. It's a long-term play for them, versus a tenant has a very different mentality when it comes to those things. And again, builders are very cognizant of these factors, and these rules are there to protect themselves from these situations.
Right. And those are all really good points, David. And it goes back to something we talked about in last week's podcast. In order for the builder to get their financing, there's certain thresholds they have to meet just to get their construction financing going over. So the last, if they need 75% or 80% sold or 90% sold, whatever that threshold is, the last thing they want is anybody competing with their sales. So, there's usually a clear no to any assignments unless there's certain conditions applied, until they get their construction financing and get it going. And sometimes, down the road, once they've met those thresholds, sometimes they'll relax some of those rules and they'll give a little more latitude on people that want assignments or want to rent it out because they're already well under construction, they got their financing, but they don't want you competing. And even, what we're experiencing too, when they do consent to an assignment or consent to allow you to rent it out, some of the conditions really make it restrictive too. They'll say, yeah, you can assign it, but you can't put it on MLS. Okay. Right. You can't market it under any social media, any multi-listing systems at all. And they're saying, yeah, go ahead, you can assign it, but we're going to put you in handcuffs to do it. And so they're saying you can get an agent to do it, but the agent can be one of your agents, and that agent can certainly advertise it within your own office. You've got 250 agents there, and they can know about it, and they might find an ability to assign it to someone internally. But you're not allowed to go on social media. You can't do a multiple listing to do it, and they're really strict about those things. And when people ignore that and do that, we get letters all the time from builders saying, hey, your client's in default. We saw it on MLS, or we saw it on WeChat, or we saw it on Facebook or some other social media. And they're saying, you're in default. We're terminating your agreement of purchase and sale. We're keeping your deposit. We're going to list it, sell it to somebody else. And then we're going, what? Wait, hang on a second. We got to write them back and explain how nice these people are and how they misinterpreted. They didn't mean to do it. We agree not to do it anymore. Don't terminate us, and we'll find another way. But this happens all the time because the language in those clauses are really prohibitive, very restrictive on how you're going to do it. Even when they're giving you permission, they're saying, go ahead and do it, but we're going to put you in handcuffs. So that's when you guys as agents really earn your value, because you got to find a way to find a tenant or find someone that'll do an assignment without advertising it the way you would normally want to do it.
Yep. And in those situations, the strength of the brokerage really comes into play, because, if you have a closed Facebook group, if you have, some sort of a community advertising board, if your office participates in exclusive listings service through a number of different companies where you can circulate listings internally, that gives you an avenue to really expose that unit in a closed environment and adhere to those rules and follow those rules and make sure that you don't break any of those regulations. Because like you said, David, we are seeing builders come down hard, terminate these transactions. And a lot of times there's so much appreciation built up over the last 3-4 years that the builder is just basically saying, well, listen, you broke the rules, you knew what they are, we're terminating you, we're going to relist at a higher price, and then we're keeping your deposit. And they're well within the rights to do that.
You're absolutely within their rights. So the builders in a win-win situation, because they can take advantage of the appreciation in value, and especially in these condo projects, it could be 3-5 years later where this is taking place and the values have gone up. So they don't like losing a sale, and a lot of times we're able to convince them, no, we'll play nice in the sandbox. We won't do that anymore. Our client will behave. We won't do that. Please don't terminate us. And a lot of times we have success doing that. But the builders would have no hesitation taking those units back. They're not going to lose money on them. They're going to sell them for a higher amount, and they're going to keep the deposits that they've received. That's a significant amount. So we have got to be very careful in those situations with clients when we're advising both of you as an agent, a real estate agent, both as lawyers, saying you've got to be aware of the assignment provisions. You got to be aware of the limitations on renting it out and the timing and when you can do it. One other reason why they control some of this, you mentioned this too, is sometimes the builder's consent says, yeah, okay, you can list it, or sorry, you can rent it out, but you can't do it through your own agent. We have our own internal agent that wants to do it, and you can only do it through them. And I know this gets you guys really upset when we run across those things. And that's really sort of a money grab too, because they say, fine, if someone's going to make a commission on it, we want to do that internally instead of, or through a relationship they've got with a brokerage that's sort of their in-house brokerage, and they're trying to cut out some of the commissions that are being paid, right? Or at least sharing them, right?
Right. Well, you know what, David, I mean, at the end of the day, we try to really empower our customers and work in their best interest. So we always like to get involved in these transactions and advocate and negotiate and help our clients through it. And I think the partnership with your company and, hearing that you guys are successful in terms of, quelling some of these concerns that builders have and getting the builder back to the table and having these conversations is really important. And, good law firm, because if you approach that situation incorrectly and approach it from a different point of view and try to fight with these builders, you're going to lose, and so will the client.
Yeah, and that's a great point too. And as it turns out, as big a city as Toronto is in the GTA, there's generally only a handful of law firms that act for these builders on these condo projects. And we come across these firms all the time. And our volume is such that on most of these projects, we're not acting for one party, one buyer in there. We're acting for multiple parties in there. And that gives us as a firm a lot of leverage too, because when we contact the builders' lawyers in this, like, they know who we are. I've got personal relations with a lot of the lawyers. Some of these firms, the lawyers that act for these builders are former partners of mine in an earlier life. We were downtown together. So when I tell them, here's the story with the buyer and here's their situation, and we're trying, we need more time, we need an extension, or we need the right to assign, or we need the right to leave. We generally get them to listen because they know they're not bullshitting them. They know we're not, we're giving them the straight goods. We're not trying to pull a fast one. We're not a fly-by-night law firm. We've got a reputation, and we wouldn't do anything like that. So we're going to give them the straight goods, and we're going to explain it to our clients the right way, and not try and do anything that we shouldn't be doing. And that's not what they what they experience with everybody. So I think that serves our clients well. We can't always get the result they want, but more often than not, we can. But we can explain the rights to them properly, and they know that we've gone to bat for them, and we've pushed things as far as we can, and then we're explaining the rights, and we're helping them make the best decision they can.
Absolutely, and that makes a world of a difference. I mean, it's this whole world is all about relationships. Very much relationship driven. And, I love the fact that you guys take that approach, because when you take a different approach and say, well, we're within our rights. And when you look at those contracts and the way they're written, they're written 100% in favor of the builder.
Right.
If you ever litigate, or if you ever go to court, or you go down that path, I mean, you're going to lose.
Right. Right. And look, we touched on a little bit last week in our part of our review agreements per sale is negotiating on the whole bunch of adjustments that are passed on from builders to the buyers. Okay. And every builder does it. And there's adjustment clauses, and sometimes there's 20 items or more that are adjusted, costs that are passed on. And sometimes they're possible costs. We're trying to negotiate these down as much as we can. The agents are trying to do it. We take a kick at the can as well when we're doing our negotiation. But it helps for us to have a relationship with some of the builders' lawyers, and we say, look, this is what we're looking for on this project. We're going to be acting for a number of buyers. All we can ask is, we want you to give us as much as they'd be giving to anybody else. And usually they'll say yes to something like that. We're not asking for things that you're not going to give to anybody, but we don't want to get less for our clients than they would possibly give to anybody. And we don't have to negotiate it every single time fresh. You know who we are, you know what we're going to be asking for. Here's the reasonable request that we're making. We're not going to ask you for stupid things. And let us know what the real story is and how far the builder's prepared to go. So we don't waste your time, you don't waste our time, and we're going to get the best deal for the buyers that we can. And that's sort of the approach that we take.
No, it's great. It's the right approach as well. I think it's all about building that relationship and protecting your client and working in their best interest, which is exactly what we all strive to do.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about the Tarion rights, Tarion warranty rights. How does that apply when you're looking at pre-construction real estate?
Well, the Tarion rights have to be embedded in every single new construction agreement of purchase and sale. It's not an optional thing. There has to be a schedule attached that has the Tarion rights. And there's a few different elements to that. One is it sort of has to set out the timing for when the closing would be. And in a condo, the timing gets sort of complicated because there's this occupancy date and then eventually there'll be a final closing. But when the builder's first marketing it, they don't know exactly what the occupancy date might be. So they put in like a tentative occupancy date that'll eventually, you'll get notice, it'll become a more permanent or official occupancy date. And then eventually there'll be a final closing date, and they'll name what an outside closing date, so the latest that these deals can be extended. It's really sort of a complicated process, but it's all set out in the schedule, the Tarion schedules that are attached to the agreement of purchase and sale. And even though we have those dates set out, there are certain rights that a builder has to unilaterally extend some of those dates too. So buyers have to be aware of that they can, without the buyer having any say, they can't negotiate what the extension time frame is going to be. The builder has the right to make unilateral extensions up to a certain point, and the buyer can't do anything about it. And then if it passes that limited right and they extend further, then there's different rights that apply to a buyer who could potentially get out of a transaction, get their deposit monies back if it gets extended too far. So that's all described in the Tarion schedule. Another part of the Tarion schedule is there's compensation that buyers might be entitled to because of some of these delays. At a certain point, the buyer, like I said, the builder can unilaterally extend. And at one point they cross that line, they're out of their extension rights, and now there might be some delayed compensation that's payable to a buyer. And there's limited amounts, and that's sort of set out in there as well. And then the next component of it, it's going into termination rights. So when does the right to terminate come in for a buyer's point of view? There's also provisions in there when a project can be terminated by the builder, when they can pull the plug on the whole project and then return deposits. So it's all set out in these Tarion schedules. Okay. And then there's a Tarion Schedule B that has to be attached as well, which is the one that has to describe all these adjustments, these additional costs that are in addition to the purchase price that the builder is making the buyer responsible for. They have to clearly describe these in the Schedule B and set it out in sort of a summary form. Because before we had this Schedule B, the builders used to just bury these adjustments in 30 pages of fine print in the agreement of purchase and sale. And now they can still be buried in there, but they have to summarize them all in a Schedule B, saying, here's how much we're charging you for utility connections, and here's how much we're charging you for the enrollment in the Tarion. Here's how much we're charging you for potential levies, development levies, education levies, things like that. They've got to spell it out, or at least put numbers to it, or approximate amounts to it. And that schedule also refers you back into the agreement of purchase and sale, what section it is that they buried it in. So you can look at the full description of it, but it's summarized. So these are all buyer protection provisions. It really helps a buyer to be able to see it. It helps a realtor find it easier to explain it to a buyer. It helps us as lawyers point to that and say, here's the summary, here's the cost. So that's all in these Tarion provisions. And the last element of the Tarion provision is really important, the Tarion warranty coverage itself, which is the guarantee of quality of workmanship, and that the construction will be in accordance with the agreement of purchase and sale, and all the follow-up things that have to be done by builder after closing, even to make sure things are repaired properly and finished properly. The protection for buyer is all part of the Tarion process as well.
Right.
There in 3 minutes, I think I summarized what I usually take 2 hours to do in a webinar.
And I mean, there's a lot of components to it, but I mean, I think it really aims to create a more transparent process for the buyer, that they can really, at one glance, read these 2 pages and have somewhat of an idea of what this whole agreement really encompasses in terms of fees, closing dates, and how the buyer's protected after they move in. And just to summarize, David, do you remember what the coverage is for Tarion home warranty, what the different time periods are? I think it's the first year or 2 years is like a bumper to bumper coverage.
Oh, you're talking about the actual warranty coverage?
The actual warranty coverage, yeah.
Yeah, there's certain things that's a couple years of coverage, and then certain things are up to 7 years for things like foundations and things like that. So it extends further. But this is also the protection that buyers have. Like, if you talk about moving in and everything's not completely finished, whether you're in a subdivision or in a condominium, and builders can generally close once they cross a certain municipal requirement to make it habitable.
Right.
Okay. And that definition changes from municipality to municipality, but generally, as a rule of thumb, like in a subdivision, in order for a builder to force you to close, there has to be water available, like running water in the house, and a toilet that's working. And you have to be able to get in and out of the house properly and safely. So we've seen situations where you can't use the front door to the house because they haven't built the stairs properly, but there's an entrance to the house through the garage. So that's good enough to allow closing. Okay. Buyer's not happy about it because they can't get their couch through the garage and their bed through the garage to move in. They've got to wait for the front door, but a builder can still force someone to close because they can get in and out through another door. And then you have to have water available in the house. And sometimes we've seen that there's a toilet in a bedroom somewhere that functions, and the only tap that works is the kitchen sink. But that's been enough in some municipalities to say the house is habitable, and the builder can say, we're closing. Now, there's a whole bunch of things that have to be finished still and fixed, and they'll have their warranty inspection. There'll be a list of repairs and things that be done, and the builder has an obligation to do that, and that goes beyond the closing date. And if they don't, the protection for the buyer is again through the Tarion warranty program. So if they don't get it done, there's a mechanism for the buyers to go to Tarion and say, here's the story, here's a list of outstanding items, we've made attempts, they haven't fixed it. And Tarion will put pressure on the builder to fix it. And if they don't, they've got security from the builder, they've got money sitting there, and they'll use that to hire trades and get it fixed on behalf of the builder. And they will not grant the builder their next building permits if they have a history of not complying with their obligations. So there's pressure through this system on builders to follow through and make sure things get finished properly.
And ultimately the buyer is protected.
That's the buyer's protection.
Yeah.
And that's where we tell our clients to go when they have complaints after closing that there's certain things that need repair or things haven't been finished. It's not through the legal process in terms of getting a litigation lawyer to start a lawsuit against the builder. Like that's way down the road and hardly ever has to happen, because the process is to push this through the Tarion, and Tarion will get in touch with the builder and get the builder to finish these items. And if the builder doesn't, then Tarion will hire trades and get it done. There's money there available for them to get these things finished.
Yeah. It's important to really keep track of timelines as well, because there's a certain time period that you have to submit a claim. And if you don't submit a claim in that time period, then you lose the coverage as well, right? So there's different steps to the Tarion home warranty. So like year one, I kind of call it like it's the bumper to bumper coverage. It requires the home to be constructed in a workmanlike manner and free from defects in material. It also protects against unauthorized substitutions, which basically means that the builder is not allowed to replace something that they advertise with something of lesser quality, but they're able to horizontally replace. So you might not have a Moen tap, but you're going to get something of equal or higher value. It requires the home to be fit for habitation, protects against Ontario Building Code violation, and it applies 1 year from the date of possession, right? And then year two is it's a little bit of a less substantial coverage. So year two protects against water penetration from basement foundation walls, defects in materials that affect windows, doors, water penetration to the building envelope, covers electrical, plumbing, heating delivery and distribution systems, and covers work or materials that results in detachment, displacement, or deterioration of exterior cladding. And again, violations of Ontario Building Code that affect health and safety. That's the 2-year coverage.
Right. And part of the process is before closing, there'll be an inspection that the buyer will do. It's like a pre-inspection that's done under Tarion. It's a walkthrough with the builder. And at that time, you make a list, the buyer would make a list of anything that's apparent to them. Now, generally, they're not bringing in a professional inspector to do that on their behalf. They just walking around sometimes with their agents with them, and they walk around, they make a list of anything that looks like it's deficient, needs repair, or anything that's not finished. Yep. Okay. There's another one 30 days after closing where they can submit another form, because a lot of times you're not going to see things, or they're not going to be apparent to you until you actually move in and try things out and everything. So there's another inspection you do 30 days after, you send another report in, and the report goes to the builder, but it also goes right into Tarion as part of the record. And then at the end of the first year of ownership, there's another opportunity to inspect and put another list in for anything. Now, some of these things will get repaired during that first year. Some of these things won't, but as long as it's on one of those lists, Tarion will help a buyer to enforce to make sure that it gets fixed or finished properly. Okay. And then there's those other items that, that generally don't become apparent until way beyond. We're talking about problems with foundations and things like that. So, they may not see that in the first year, but it won't matter, because there'll be coverage for that if it's 2-3 years later down the road when the problem actually arises, if it's one of those type of issues.
Yeah. So major defects are covered for 7 years, structural damage and load bearing elements of a building, right? So, I mean, it's a good system in the fact that, buyers can really enter a transaction. The deposit is fully protected, they're protected. There's a warranty system in place. The whole process, the Condominium Act, Tarion the home warranty, it is geared towards buyers, and it does protect everybody to kind of move forward, buy something from a builder, and go through this whole lengthy process. So, we are seeing more and more people look at pre-construction projects, and we are seeing agents becoming more and more familiar and building relationships with builders and offering pre-construction projects to their clients. And the trends are only going to continue to rise, because David, I mean, there's less and less land available in the GTA. I mean, we have Lake Ontario to the south. there's a lot of land that's protected by environmental protection agencies as well to the north. So, we're still seeing amazing immigration numbers and people migrating into Ontario. And the trend is to keep building upward.
Yeah, and there's going to be lots of new construction, both within the city and in the outskirts of the city. There's lots of cranes when you drive around right now. A lot of condominium projects on the go. That's going to continue. And I want to just make one other point before we wrap up this discussion, because you and I talk about teamwork and our teamwork. Not only are we, David and David on real estate, but we're one David with a real estate brokerage, one David with a law firm, but we talk about our teamwork between lawyer and agent all the time and how important it is. And it's in new construction, it becomes really important for a lot of these reasons we've discussed. Like, we're on the same team, we're both looking out for the clients and the same thing, and we both have a role to play on these new construction, reviewing the agreements, discussing rights to assign, explaining it to clients, discussing rights to occupy and tenants' rights, when you can lease it, things like that, discussing adjustments, explaining the HST on a purchase price, HST rebates, how that works. There's so many issues, there's so many moving parts, and it's really critical that any buyer has a good team to work with. And and the team starts with their agent, with their lawyer, eventually get to a mortgage broker and things like that. But we're on the same team, actually same client, same buyer, and there's so many issues on new construction. So you got to get the right people helping you out.
Yeah. And I think, David, next week we're going to do part 3 on reconstruction. And we're going to talk about assignments, how those work, how they get structured, how those deals get put together. We're also going to talk about HST and HST rebates, because that's a big topic as well. And normally each one of these
assignments have a big effect on that too. So it's really part of that. It's worthwhile discussing it.
Absolutely. And we're going to continue talking about the psychology of selling pre-construction next week as well. So, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's conversation.
Hey, I don't mean to cut you off, Dave, but we talked about good news, and you were the bearer of some good news earlier, and I'd be remiss if I didn't pass on officially my public good news on a personal level today. My daughter had a baby last night, and I'll get emotional talking about it, but it's one of those life-changing things. So this is my 5th grandchild. I know that'll surprise a lot of people listening to these podcasts or watching it once we're on YouTube or wherever else we're going to be. They say, how could that guy possibly have 5 grandchildren, right? That's going to be the big takeaway from this. But this is my 5th grandchild, 3rd one for my daughter, a beautiful baby girl born late last night. So we're so excited, and it's so nice to be able to share that information, and because that's really what life's all about. Okay, that's what I do every day. My first job is being a good husband to my wife, and being a good dad to my kids, and being a good granddad to my grandkids, and a good friend to my friends. And then the rest of the time I have during the day, I try and be a good businessman, a good partner to my partner, and a good leader in my community. But it starts with my family. So I'm just happy and honored to share that good news with everybody.
Yeah, David, I'm glad you took a few minutes and you mentioned that. And my sincerest congratulations. I'm glad that mom's healthy, and I'm glad baby's healthy as well. And we're all extremely, extremely, extremely happy for you. And like you said, there's nothing better out there than life, right?
Right.
That's what life is all about. And congratulations. I'm shocked. I mean, I knew you're a grandfather. I had no idea you had 5 grandkids. That is absolutely phenomenal. Congratulations.
And number 6 is on the way. I'll be updating everybody in February, hopefully, and we'll keep it going.
Keep the good news going. That's amazing, David. Congratulations one more time from everybody here.
Thank you.
Give mom a big hug from us as well.
Will do. Looking forward to next week.
As am I. Stay safe, everybody. Have lots of kids and buy real estate.
Stay safe, everybody. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to David and David on Real Estate. Join us as we explore the ins and outs of the real estate market and dive deep to understand the issues affecting buyers, sellers, investors, and businesses. If you love real estate as much as we do, sit back, relax, and gain an insider's edge to the exciting world of real estate. David Gorski is a broker and the owner of Sutton Summit Realty, a powerhouse brokerage providing guidance to over 180 realtors. And David Korman is a partner at Kormans LLP, a respected law firm specializing in residential and commercial real estate transactions, with offices located in Toronto, Mississauga, and Markham.